SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning to you. How are you doing? I hope it is a wonderful, wonderful middle of the week, colloquially known as, Rhino, Hump Day. That would be correct. The camel is in full gallop on this Wednesday, and we are ready for the downhill slope. I don't know about you, buddy, but at this point, this week could be just about done. I'd be fine with that.
You'd hear no complaints from me.
Yeah. And you're speaking as someone who didn't work Monday, so exactly. You know how bad it is. How you doing, man?
Oh, not too bad. We've made it to Hump Day, and my lemonade doesn't taste quite lemony enough, so I'm hoping if I shake it, it'll be a little bit more lemony, or maybe I should have got some caffeine.
You should have got some caffeine. The correct answer is always should have got some caffeine, unless the correct answer is should have gotten more caffeine. That's also a viable answer to that statement. A lot of stuff as usual. We got the mayor of Natchez joining us at the bottom of the hour. Great stuff going on in Natchez. We'll be talking about. Yesterday mentioned the whole thing, the published papers with the UFOs. I'm going to get into that before we're done here today. And the fact that Luigi Mangione was attacked by Thai ladyboys. We'll get to that story in case you haven't seen that or heard that. Crying out loud.
7 of them.
7, yes. It was a pack of 7 Thai ladyboys, which is just, Thailand speak for dudes in dresses, as you say all the time, basically. Sometimes you just have a bad day, apparently, and it leads to more bad days. Had something that came out just about an hour ago. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, put out and said, I'm going to read you his tweet. He's got a graph. I'm not going to read you the graph because you can't read graphs out loud. He said the budget deficit began to shrink dramatically beginning in the second quarter of this year when there was no overlap from the Biden administration. From April to September, the cumulative deficit totaled just $468 billion. This is the lowest reading since 2019 and is down nearly 40% from the comparable period last year when Biden was spending recklessly. Whether you see it or not, whether you realize it or not, they are having enormous impact in the Trump administration on financial situations. Down 40% from the same time last year. That is a clear market difference in the way we're doing business. Of course, it doesn't hurt that right now we're not paying anybody in the federal government. But this goes through September, so that really doesn't apply to those numbers, which means the next quarter potentially going to be even lower in the deficit. What should the deficit be? A negative number. We should have a surplus. At worst, the deficit should be 0. Yes. But I do think it's facetious that everyone is stomping around with impatience saying, well, I want this fixed now. Well, you want a list of things I want that you got to work long and hard to get them? I think everybody has that list. It doesn't happen because you walk in the door and say, make it so.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
The deficit wasn't an invention of an overnight problem. This has been growing and festering.
Uncontrolled for the last 4 years. If anything, it's been exacerbated. It's forget trying to put the fire out. They were fanning the flames and throwing lumps of coal in it. Now we're getting back to a little bit more of a normal thing, but I want to make sure that you catch that this is a great data point, a great piece of proof that it wasn't just the way things are. It wasn't just that prices have gone up and things cost more and the economy is different and all of the excuses that we have gotten over the years for why the deficit kept increasing every year. It's down 40% from the same period last year. That tells me you were lying. I know. Big surprise. Nobody expected the left to lie in the cause of money, but here we are. So I just wanted to make sure we highlighted that first thing because that is big news. What we have to do is get over our general disdain of every piece of positive news because we don't think it's positive enough. I see a lot of that. I don't know if you see that, Rhino. It doesn't matter what happens. You have a segment of the population that's immediately going to go, well, that's it? You haven't done anything. I didn't send you there to do part of the job. Calm down. If you were so smart, why didn't you run? Why aren't you doing it? The Sunday morning couch quarterbacks have gotten very annoying and counterproductive to what's actually being done and what's happening. One of the things, and President Trump is an outlier in this, but as a general overall rule in life, the people who are complaining the loudest are usually the ones that are getting the least done. The people getting stuff done don't have time to sit around and whine and moan and complain that everything's not being done to their satisfaction. That's usually the way it works. If you pay attention, if you think back through your life and experiences you've had, that's very much a rule of life in general. Going back, and I'm going to hit this all throughout the show, the whole UFO thing, did you come up with any great explanations for what the reflected thing, for those of you that didn't hear it yesterday, a team of scientists went back and studied the photographic plates taken from Palomar Observatory back in the late 40s, early 50s, and found things that were in orbit. Sputnik went up in 57. That was our first actual satellite that humanity put into orbit. Saw things up there that after they did analysis, they were lights and then they would go away. They figured out they weren't stars. They obviously weren't planets or anything else. And they did analysis and figured out that it was actually things that were reflecting sunlight that were in orbit up above the sky. And you really don't have a lot of other explanations for what it is other than, oh, it's beep boop, the alien. But, there's always something else. So I tasked you yesterday, gave you homework to come up with what your best explanation would be for that. And I want to hear them today over the course of the show. Rhino, did you come up with anything?
Well, I thought I had something really great, and then I dug a little deeper and come to find out my timeline doesn't really line up with reality, because I was thinking, well, technically wasn't one of the first objects we put into the atmosphere the manhole cover that they welded shut over the Operation, was it Plum Bob? I think it was Operation Plum Bob.
Yeah.
Was the underground nuclear test. And that single manhole cover, which I say manhole cover, that's the way it's been told all over the internet. It was actually like a really big honking piece of metal welded over the opening. It was captured on a high-speed camera for, I believe, one frame, and the minimum speed it could have been going to enter the frame for the high-speed camera put it into orbit. There's just one problem. Operation Plum Bob was in 1957.
Oh, yeah.
It happened before Sputnik, but was too late for this.
Yeah, because this was like 48 to 54, I think it was, these plates that they studied. So it's got a comfortable margin of error that it wasn't. Now, maybe the manhole cover traveled so fast it went back in time. That's a possibility.
That's booking it.
Yeah. It's also absurd, but that's the level of conversation we're dealing with these days on planet Earth.
But they did get me thinking. The only other rational explanation would be involving nuclear weapons, because there were nuclear weapon tests and nuclear weapon detonations prior to these showing up. The question is, was it stuff flung into the atmosphere? Was it something in the atmosphere reacting to it? That's where you get a little wonky.
Well, they didn't exist at that point. Otherwise, my guess would be a trampoline sent into orbit by a hurricane. That would be a distinct possibility, because we see that every time one comes through. We're not going to get to see if that still works that way this year. It doesn't look like. Now I've jinxed us. Great. We continue on this Wednesday morning in the Element Wealth Studios on Middays right after this.
Ricky, don't lose that number. Ricky, don't lose that number. Ricky, don't lose that number.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome to Earth, third rock from the sun. She walks into Smokies, one hip at a time, like a broken field runner, slipping through the line. He likes the way she looks, so he calls a little wife, says, don't wait up for me, I'll be working late tonight. Wife hangs up the phone, bursts into tears, calls her sister up and cries, get over here.
Welcome back. Absolute perfection. Well done, buddy. Well done. You know, it's fitting that we're having all of these conversations right now, because tomorrow Gerard is going to put in a day's work at the Golden Nugget in Biloxi. It's the annual Mississippi Aerospace and Defense Symposium presented by Aerospace and Defense Alliance of Mississippi and Mississippi Enterprise for Technology. Going to show off what we did. You know, we are plugged into the space program and things in that realm, and sometimes we forget that, I think. We play an integral part in all of this. You can find out more at MS Aero Defense, AERO, aerodefense.org. Gerard will be there tomorrow. We were talking about the Palomar plates thing. There's new information coming out about this comet. Have you been keeping up with the Comet 3I Atlas?
I've been seeing bits and pieces, some of which I've seen is like, okay, well that's like a normal kind of NASA report, just kind of boring information and data points. And then I see this stuff where people are tightening up the tinfoil hat and reading into numbers and pulses and all kind of stuff, and I'm just going, okay, hang on. How did you get this from that and that from those and those from these? Because none of that connects in a sane brain.
Having said that, the latest thing that is out, and this is supposedly from independent observers, so take that for what you will, because as we all know, the powers of observation are keen amongst the general populace. But they're saying they've been plotting the course of this thing, because a lot of people are watching it closely, and they say it's off its projected course by about 1 million kilometers. Here's the thing that I think, you want my guess? Well, it doesn't matter. You're going to get it. I think this is going to be a great example and a great lesson in the fact that when you get right down to it, despite the story we have told ourselves, despite the story we have sold ourselves, we don't know squat about squat. There are more things we don't know than we ever will know about this universe in general. Because this thing is weird. It's showing all sorts of signs from the official NASA reporting that just aren't what you would expect. That doesn't mean it's an alien spacecraft. It just means this is something we've never seen before. But this has always been a problem with the human race. We always seem to fall into the trap of assuming we know everything there is to know. We've talked about it before, Rhino. At one point, I think it was in the 1800s, the head of the U.S. Patent Office sent a letter asking that the office be shut down because everything that could be invented had already been invented. We keep falling into the trap of, yep, got it all figured out this time. Promise, this is it. We know it all. Wait, what's that? Oh, that's weird. Oh, ignore it. Don't pay no attention to this over here because we know what we're talking about. And then over the course of a generation, it turns out now we know something different. But this is it. I promise. I swear. I think this is a great object lesson incoming, well, passing by at this point, that despite all of our bluster and all of our hubris, we still basically don't know anything. And we need to quit assuming we do and acting like we do, because to me that stifles advancement when you go into every situation under pressure to provide a definitive answer on something you don't understand. The whole point of it is supposed to be to find stuff you don't understand and poke it with a stick and go, wow, it moves funny. That should be the goal of all science. Instead, we have the slavering, pedantic masses who demand an explanation right now, and if we can't explain something, obviously we're covering something up. No, sometimes we just don't know what the heck's going on. And the quicker we admit that to ourselves, I think the smoother of a road we're going to have. Because I guarantee you, Rhino, some of those that you're seeing, and I'm seeing the same things about this comet, some of those that you're seeing that are, as you put it so perfectly, tightening the tinfoil hat. It's like a tinfoil trucker cap, I guess. You got the strap in the back. Some of those people are the ones that are screaming the loudest that this is a cover-up, and we know more than we're being, they know more than we're being told, and there's more information here, and why aren't you telling us the truth? I guarantee you're seeing that from some of these people. That's the general prevalent attitude, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's where it gets to. It starts off as the euphoria and the joy of discovery, and then the sharing of these new things. And then when not as many invisible internet cool points come their way for sharing what they've discovered, they tend to get angry and turn that anger towards anybody that doesn't agree with them.
Yeah, it's a fantastic sign of someone who has no accomplishment in their life, and they're really upset that this one doesn't seem to be taking either. But you got to remember, here's the perspective. Here's the perspective on this as you hear things. And I guarantee you things are going to pick up, because you got to realize right now this thing is on the other side of the sun from us. It's not coming within 100 million miles of Earth. It's all the way on the other side of the sun. We can't even directly see it right now from planet Earth, which is the only place we can try to look at it from, right? And we've got all of this ramping up now when it's not even visible. When it comes back out on the other side, it's going to pick up again. You're going to hear some coverage about it. You're going to hear a lot of chatter, a lot of talk about it. I want you to keep in mind, we are only a few hundred years removed from people being put to death because they said, no, the sun doesn't go around the earth goes around the sun. Because that was so obviously wrong, because we knew everything.
I would also caution against listening to anybody that says you got to wear the same type of shoes and pick up that red Solo cup of Kool-Aid over there on the table.
Yes. Button that top button on your shirt. The comment will be here momentarily. When did it become a bad thing to be stupid, Rhino? And I don't mean stupid from the standpoint of your IQ has 2 digits, but there's a decimal between them, stupid. I mean admitting you don't know something. When did that become a sure sign of evil to look at something that you don't understand and go, I don't know, you got me, let's figure it out? Why is that suddenly such a bad thing? Well, I say suddenly, that's a little misleading.
Yeah,
it's been
I was
that way for a while.
It's been slowly building to that as the discourse on these kind of things goes away from the end of the bar or a basement or a clubhouse or on the tailgate or something, where it was just these wild conversations with people you actually knew and trusted enough to talk about your craziest conspiracy theories about. And now it's gone to, well, instead of having to build up enough trust with someone to talk about this, or instead of having to have enough liquid courage in me to talk about this, I can go online and find 10,000 people that are more ravenous about this than I am, and I can fit right in, and it emboldens me.
Yes. Humans are pack animals. We like to be accepted by the group because, again, it wasn't that terribly long ago in the grand scheme of things that if you weren't accepted by the group, you were going to get eaten by a mastodon and die. There was safety in numbers. That's ingrained in humanity in general. So you're looking for people to belong with. And the goofier you are, the harder that search was until the internet took over and changed that, exactly like Rhino just said. I think the mastodons were actually herbivorous, so they would have just stomped you to death. They wouldn't have eaten you to death, but the image still stands.
Yeah, you're still just as dead.
Yeah, either way. Digested, flat, it's a moot point to you by then. When we come back, Natchez Mayor Dan Gibson joins us. We'll be talking to him when we return in the Element Wealth Studios on Middays. Right after this. Keep it here.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, Super Talk, Mississippi Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Dave Hughes here, and joining us now, the Right Honorable Mayor of Natchez, Dan Gibson. How you doing this morning, Mayor?
Good morning, Dave. I'm doing great. A beautiful day here in Natchez. I hope things are shining down on you up in Jackson.
Well, it's beautiful all over the state. Every day is a good day if you're in Mississippi.
You know, that's really true. We are blessed to live in this great Magnolia State.
You know, before we get to the serious topic, I just want to say, has the Balloon Festival happened yet, or is that's coming up, isn't it?
We had our best festival ever, Dave. Our 40th Balloon Festival this past weekend. That Balloon Festival is just glowing strong. I mean, it was a beautiful weekend.
Well, it's been a year or two since I've made it to the Balloon Festival. On my way, it seems like I've always got 17 other things going on that weekend. But the last time I was there, it looked like you had about 9 million balloons. They were everywhere.
And I think about 18 million people. It really is overwhelming sometimes. And for a little town that's right there on the highest bluff of the mightiest river with all the history we've got, it's really amazing when you can see thousands of people packed in, having a good time, and being safe while they're doing it.
Well, that word safe leads us right into the topic I want to talk to you about, because it is rare that I read an op-ed written by someone and actually start physically applauding while I'm reading it. But that's what happened to me with the op-ed we published Friday from you regarding crime in Mississippi, violent crime, and specifically repeat offenders. And I'm going to lead it. I'm going to kind of jump in front of the conversation just a little bit to get it started. Is it time to put a 3 strikes law into effect for everybody in violent crime?
Gosh, I think that's a great idea. It's getting out of hand. And here we were going into our festival weekend on high alert because things are happening all over the state, Dave. And we are so grateful we had a great, safe weekend. But my heart is heavy because all over our state, law enforcement is just beating its head against a wall. All of these great officers we have having to arrest the same people over and over because all over our state we seem to have a system that's broken, and the offenders become repeat offenders, and then before you know it, they're picking up the guns. We're having violent crime like we're seeing, and it's always repeat offender in 80% or more of the cases.
Yes, and that's the thing. If we had a strict 3 strikes and you're out law, in other words, the third time you commit a violent crime, the third time you shoot somebody, for example, you're not getting out. You're done. It's over. You're just in jail.
Dave, I'm going to incorporate that into my talking points. I think you are right on.
Because if you did that, here's an interesting thing. Yeah, it is past time. But if you look at the stats, if you did that, if we put that into effect, over half of violent crime would go away at that point, looking at the stats.
In fact, probably more than that. I was talking to a retired sheriff just last week. He's also a retired Mississippi Highway Patrolman. He said to me, Mayor, the gun violence is very rarely a first-time offender. People build up confidence. They get away with crime. They then think, well, hey, the sky's the limit. And he told me something that my police officers have told me time and time again. It's 80% repeat offenders. I want to introduce Mississippi to a new word today. Dave, that word is 80%itis. And we are suffering from it, and it will be a fatal condition, and it will kill our communities if we don't overcome it. 80% of the violent crime happening in Mississippi is repeat offenders. And if you look at the rules set by the Supreme Court, and it's not like I used to think, it's not the legislature. Supreme Court sets the bond guidelines. And when judges, from municipal judge to county judge, circuit judge, when they are setting bonds, they follow these rules, and actually many don't even follow the rules. The bond guidelines are low. You can bond out for murder for as low as $25,000 in this state. That's $2,500 if you have to put up the 10%, and then you can finance that with a bail bondsman, maybe $100 every other week or so while you're waiting on trial for 2 or 3 years. Now, I want to just mention this, though. In the rules set by the Supreme Court for establishing bond, do you think they refer once to Mississippi's Victims' Bill of Rights? Just a question. Not. Do you think they refer once to the Victims' Bill of Rights?
No, because it has been a building problem to me in America in general over the past decade, I would say, that we care much more for the assailant than we do the victim, it seems.
Oh, yeah. It's all about the rights of the accused. But let me tell you something. We also need to make sure it's mandatory in this state that whenever we have a bond hearing and it goes before the judge, that the judge has to be given the prior arrest record. Because, yeah, it's okay to say innocent until proven guilty. That is the bedrock of our judicial system going back to our founding fathers. However, if a judge sees that this person who is accused in a violent crime has an arrest record that's longer than a shotgun, and then he looks at that and its arrest records on violent crime, that should then be a determinant in saying, no, this person's a danger to society. This person needs to be locked up until the trial date and not allowed to cause further harm on our society.
I would love to see stats, and I have a suspicion about what band they would fall in, but I would love to see the stats on how many people commit an act of violence while they're out on bond awaiting trial for a different act of violence. That number's not zero, and that's exactly the problem you're talking about.
We've seen it in our community. For one thing, it's getting harder and harder to prosecute and get a conviction because you've got to have good forensics, and the crime lab, is not properly funded. We're hoping the legislature can increase funding. We're losing forensic scientists every year to other states. They come right out of University of Southern Mississippi with a forensics degree. They work a year, and then they go sometimes making double in other states. We're one of the lowest paying states for crime lab. But then on top of that, it's getting harder to get a conviction because people are so scared of retaliation that they won't even testify against the person who has done them harm. This has happened in Natchez. We had someone just last November who had shot someone literally in the head. The person would not testify against them, but they were still, we still were able to arrest them, file charges for attempted murder. The person survived. Attempted murder, and we put them in jail, and the very next week they bonded out on a cash bond because some of these assailants, because of their records, have a lot of cash in their drawer because they're in a certain business. I think it may be the pharmaceutical business, but, you figure that out. But, Dave, this person 3 weeks later attacked one of our police officers with his bare hands. State of Mississippi, that's called simple assault, unless you're using a firearm or a weapon, which is aggravated assault. Simple assault on a law enforcement officer in Mississippi does not carry a minimum penalty. The minimum penalty is 0. He was, in a few months, found guilty, but released for time served. And then the bond that he had in place on the attempted murder charge is still in effect. Because in Mississippi, unless the penalty is 5 years or more for the crime you're bonded out on, you commit another crime, that bond can't be revoked. To me, it shouldn't matter if the penalty is 0 or 10 or 50. If you've committed a violent crime on someone, well, let's say you're accused of that, you're out on bond, and you commit another crime, that bond should be revoked. You should be in jail. Don't tell me you can attack a police officer in this state with your bare hands and not have the bond revoked on your prior crime. Now, we're just touching the surface. There's something, I know time's limited, but Dave, I just got to tell you something that I think people just really won't believe because I'm learning too much. Are you ready for it?
I am braced and ready, Mayor. Lay it on me.
Dave, when you go through all of these crimes and you look at it, more and more, these are young people who are getting guns at an early age. They are getting onto the streets. They're getting away with it. They're becoming brazen. They're training others to do it. And what we are finding is, all across the state, we are having people generally under the age of 30 who are repeat offenders so bad that some of them have 5 or 10 arrests and are still on our streets and are still able to bond out.
Well,
How is that happening?
I think a good rule of thumb moving forward is if you hurt somebody, we're going to hurt your feelings.
There you go. There you go. And another thing, too, that, I just am, again, learning too much is that
we only have about 15 seconds or so, Mayor.
Dave, 80%itis also applies to our judges. 80% of our judges throughout the state are letting people off, sometimes even on their own recovery.
We've sent that rib band.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back. The Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Dave Hughes on Middays. Want to thank the mayor for joining us, Dan Gibson from Natchez. They got great. If you haven't been to Natchez, what are you doing with your free time? It is a fantastic city, now, of course, personally, I love the architecture. You go down to the main part, to the downtown area of Natchez, and it kind of has a New Orleans vibe, which if you know anything about the history, that makes just an earth-shattering amount of sense. But it's just a nice place, good energy, good vibe, good whatever you want to call it, and a good time if you go and hang out. But I think the mayor is fired up over something that we need to be fired up about, because if you've got someone that is back again, repeat offender, and say it's we'll make it minimum to the whole 3 strikes proposal that I'm throwing out, they are arrested for the 3rd time because they have assaulted someone, either with their bare hands, a baseball bat, a labubu, a gun, whatever. 3rd time. Why do we care more about their rights than the rights of the people who have been assaulted, who will sleep a little easier if they know that person is off the streets and isn't going to turn back up again? Why is one set of rights more important than the other in the eyes of the law right now? That seems a little unbalanced to me. Maybe it's just me. I don't understand why. Yes, rights are important. If you're accused of something, you get your day in court. Especially if you've been convicted 2 times, if you've been found guilty 2 times of some sort of violent crime. Well, that 3rd time, we're done. That's my concept of this. Now, there will be wailing and whining and rending of garments and gnashing of teeth over that suggestion. On a side note, and in response to that, the only thing I've got to offer is I don't care. I don't care at all. If you're a criminal, you are by definition societally not even as good as non-criminals. You're worse. You're less. You're lesser than. So why do you get preferential treatment? But that has been the movement for, again, as I told the mayor, about a decade. You know, the people that we should spend the least amount of time listening to are the ones that we give all of our attention to. It's been that way for a minute. Notice, by the way, I'm not mentioning anything about political affiliation. That's not a point. We got dummies on both sides. You know that. There's a much higher concentration of dummies on one side than the other one. And you also know that. But a great example is the governor's race in Virginia. Have you been keeping up with this, Rhino?
The governor's race or the lieutenant governor's race? Because is that the one with the guy that was texting about wanting to kill kids?
Oh, no. The current lieutenant governor of Virginia is a woman named Winsome Earl Sears. Black woman from Jamaica, former Marine, devout Republican. She won the lieutenant governorship. She's running for governor. Her opponent is a white liberal woman who preaches and screams about how DEI is so important. And they're basically neck and neck.
And it's nobody sees the irony there?
No. Her opponent keeps thinking she's making, valuable points in the discussion. It's gonna be the almost.
Isn't the guy running for lieutenant governor of Virginia the one that was sending text messages about how he wanted to kill kids and watch them die in their mother's arms and stuff?
Yes. That's one of the people running to replace.
Jones, I think.
Yeah, Winsome Earl Sears in the lieutenant governor's office in Virginia.
There's all kind of weird and wacky stories in the wild world of politics, because there's another story out of Texas with a congressional race where the incumbent has not denied having an affair with a married staffer, and The allegation is that he got the married staffer pregnant, and then she set herself on fire.
Oh, yeah, I did see something about that. I'm sure if he ever does refer to it, which I doubt, he will refer to it as an unfortunate combustion event. The humanity, in a large part, has drained out of the political spectrum. What little was there to begin with? Let's just be honest about it. We're up against news, Fox News, SuperTalk Mississippi News, and then hour number 2 of Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. It's right around the corner after all of this cheerfulness and perk you up stuff from the news. Keep it here.
The hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Here on a very special day, you know it better as
Hump Day.
Almost missed his cue. I'm starting to catch him by surprise. I like that. Got to keep you on your toes, buddy. Dave Hughes here. Sometimes you see somebody completely mangle a common expression or phrase, and it's just stupid. Every once in a while, I think there is one that needs to enter common usage. And the kind of thing I'm talking about, I hear people all the time say that something needs to be stopped before it really gets going. They say, nip it in the butt. It's bud, B-U-D. Nip it in the bud, not butt.
Bone apple tea.
But I just saw one I think we should all start using. You know the phrase scapegoat.
Yes.
You got to have a scapegoat to blame something on so that you can get away from it scot-free. Instead of saying scapegoat, they said escape goat. I like that one. That one's not bad. That one's not bad. All right.
I thought you were going to say scapegoat.
Oh, no, that would be a totally different and much cooler thing. Take a goat, put it on a skateboard, shove it off the cliff. Enjoy. That's the final step in that process, I think. All right. The conversation around the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and the argument and the hostage-taking that continues by the Democrats in Congress over it, I think is about to start proving a point to a lot of people they didn't want to highlight, but they're too dumb to realize it. Senator Amy Klobuchar.
I was hoping we were going to talk about this.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're going here. Has come out. She has highlighted an article from CNBC. Early retirees like Bill and Shelley will see their health insurance premiums increase nearly 300% if congressional Republicans refuse to extend the enhanced tax credits. That's an extra $15,000 a year families can't afford. The couple in question, you go to the article and read it. Bill is 61, Shelley is 60. They've been paying $442 a month for health insurance under Obamacare. That is supposedly going to go up to $1,700 a month. would you explain why we've got a couple here, 61 and 60, to give full disclosure and establish the credentials? I'm 58. Okay, so I'm right there in that same age group. Why am I supposed to keep busting my behind and paying my taxes to cover for somebody who's basically my age getting to sit at home with their feet propped up and go, boy, them taxpayers ain't paying as much as they used to. There's something wrong with this. We're gonna suffer. Suck it up, Buttercup. Am I missing something here, Rhino?
No, it was just one of those things where I saw the tweet from Senator Klobuchar, and I'm going, hang on.
Yeah.
This went through how many hands, how many eyes looked at this? How out of touch are y'all that y'all thought it was a great idea to highlight early retirees as the victims of all this?
You poor thing. You made it so well that by age 60 you retired. You're at home. You're living the high life. And now I'm supposed to work even harder and pay even more taxes so you can keep living that same high life. They're hiring greeters at Walmart, buddy. Crank up the old SUV and head over and fill out an application if you're struggling. Because I have zero, and I mean zero is overstating it properly, zero sympathy, empathy, or anything else for that. That is quite possibly the stupidest take I have seen so far in this entire argument. But exactly what you said. How many hands did that go through? And all of them went, oh yeah, this will show them. This is great. This is a great example of how people are going to suffer if we don't get our way. It's ridiculous.
It gets
Absolutely.
even more ridiculous when you get down towards the bottom of the article. And, well, if they have to pay these higher premiums, then, quote, they'll be putting off non-mandatory medical care and traveling less. End quote.
So you don't get a vacation and a nose job. Boo-hoo! Because this is a massive amount of tax money that gets spent on this every year. When it was originally put into place by the Democrats, go back and check the records, no Republicans voted for this when it was forced in because they had the majority at that point in Congress and the White House. So they forced it through. It was not affordable. To anyone with a basic level of math skill, it was obvious this was not sustainable long term. It was never going to work out that in 100 years we were still doing things this way. But now we've reached a point to where people have finally started to wake up a little bit and realize, wait a minute. I'm working my behind off, going to bed exhausted every night, so the 60-year-old can have an easy retirement early. The heck with them. And I mean that in any way you care to take it. But this is another example of what we were talking about with Mayor Gibson from Natchez last hour. We have too much compassion for the wrong people. Should you be compassionate? Yes. I think you should be selective with it. Should you show compassion to someone who has axe-murdered 10 people? It's going to be hard to argue there. Am I supposed to keep working until I'm 80 to make sure that the insurance is paid for the people basically my age who retired at 60? I'm supposed to be compassionate for their plight. What about my plight? Have you priced Little Debbie's lately? I got a plight going on myself. That is not the win that they want to represent it as you so adroitly pointed out. And sooner or later this has to come to an end, and I think this is one way to do it. You have to laugh them out of the room when they come out with something this ridiculous. I wonder, you brought up a good point, I wonder how many staffers' hands that went through for Senator Klobuchar before it was publicly posted. The answer is not zero. She may have not even read it, to be honest.
I think it's more likely that she didn't.
Yeah, she finds out what she said later. which, if you think about it, is hand in hand with the concept of we have to pass this bill to find out what's inside it. Yeah, well, somebody else has to post my tweet before I find out what I said. It's functionally the same attitude. So that would make a lot of sense. But that is the problem with the entire argument as it stands right now. It doesn't make sense. Specifically, it doesn't make sense to the people that are paying the bills. You can't look at someone who is struggling to afford the basic necessities in life, who are longingly remembering the days when they could afford to go on a vacation over a weekend. The people who used to be able to go out and have a good time on a regular basis, blow off some steam. No, it's work all the time now. And you look at those people and say, well, there's people that have already retired that need your help. That's a good way to get a kick in the shins if you say it in person. So we have to diffuse that line of thought. We have to do away with that. And step one, there needs to be just ridiculous amounts of mocking. A little bit later on in the article, I don't know if you saw this, they actually retired in their early 50s. They have pension income. They had IRA savings. They had $123,000 adjusted gross income in 2023, $136,000 in 2024.
All I'm hearing is they retired early because they were well enough off. And then they started paying premiums on Obamacare. And then COVID hit and these subsidies kicked in, so they paid less. And now they're complaining they got to go back to paying what they were paying pre-COVID.
I want to relax by the pool in Cabo, and I'm not going to be able to do that for as many days next year because you're not giving me more of your tax money. Seriously, that's the argument. And, personal note, that argument, you can shove it.
At Fillmore Buick.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back. Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Dave Hughes on this Wednesday. Another fun fact from that article, by the way. Bill worked for over 31 years in local and state government in Nevada and Idaho. We are dangerously close to discussing PERS, and I just have a moral argument against even talking about it at this point because, well, that'll be covered. Did see an interesting article, though, that kind of ties into this, I think. Personally, I think it definitely ties in. There are almost 500,000 people in America that have now chosen to live in an RV instead of a home or an apartment because that's all they can afford. But we must remember Bill and his wife wanting to take more vacations. Don't you have a heart? No, it's time to be cold-hearted. This is a very unpopular opinion in some circles, and I also, once again, don't care. Rampant, unchecked, unmodulated compassion is ruining a whole lot of stuff in America. Should you be compassionate? Yes. Should you be compassionate to everyone, regardless of circumstance, situation, or what may or may not have happened to get them there? No. You ever gotten hate mail from preachers, Rhino? I'll share some of mine after this segment. Because it's going to happen, but I'm sorry. It's just a fact. That's what we're discussing here. The 3 strikes law for repeat violent offenders. Get them off the street. They can't assault anyone if they can't reach them through the cell door. So that problem is solved. Bill and Shirley, well, they can't buy the things they want and go on as many trips as they want because other people aren't willing to work for longer so that they can enjoy their early retirement, which they took almost 10 years ago at age 61. Compassion is necessary. Compassion is an important part of being a human, but so is sound judgment. I feel no compassion for Bill and Shirley. I feel no compassion for the violent offenders that go out there and keep doing the same thing over and over and over because we're stupid enough to let them because we have to be compassionate. No, we don't. We don't. Not to the level that we are. And that is the liberal mindset in a nutshell. Everyone that does something wrong deserves compassion, unless they don't agree with me politically, in which case we should really get everything set up and burn them all at the stake right now, immediately. It's amazing how quickly the compassion goes away when it's someone that doesn't agree with them.
Maybe we should just recapture the definition of compassion. Because, I mean, historically, right. I think it could be argued that it was considered compassionate when you had a prayer engraved on the executioner's sword saying, when I raise this sword, so I wish that this poor sinner will receive eternal life. That was the compassionate part. The realistic part was get this jackwad out of society.
Right. Well, it's misplaced, misdirected compassion that's our biggest problem right now. You mess up, and I argue in a completely different arena that applies to people like Bill and Shirley. You messed up. You retired at 50. And now you're going to have money problems if the government, if Papa Washington doesn't come bail you out with his deep pockets, which he is filling by picking the pockets of people who didn't retire at 50 and decided to live a productive life, you don't get compassion. You don't. You know who else doesn't get compassion? Oh, man. I might as well file all of the potential complaint situations into one segment. Let's just concentrate it here. Have you seen the number of videos of people who are loudly complaining that if the EBT benefits get cut off at the first of the month because of the federal government shutdown, they're just going to go start stealing stuff?
Oh, yeah.
It's dozens. I've seen dozens personally. I'm sure there's many, many more than that. The biggest bunch of entitled crybabies I have ever seen in my life. One of them, my favorite one, is a guy that is an influencer. His posts get an average of 250,000 views on Instagram. He's making money, but he's not reporting it, so he's on EBT. And he's raising heck. How am I supposed to eat without EBT? There's this thing called a job. Or in the case of Bill and Shirley, check your IRA account. Maybe you're doing well. We need to quit having sympathy for all of these types of people. We need to quit having empathy and compassion for people that don't deserve it. There are deserving people that should get our full empathy and compassion. Not everybody on planet Earth falls into that box. And this is another symptom of something you and I have talked about many times, Rhino, which is that, well, there's been this pervasive belief that everybody is the same. Same situation, same intelligence level, same aptitude, same ability, same potential. That's not true. It's just not. Could they be turned around? Yes. Our guest yesterday, George Mulvaney, he went from being a very active member of the KKK, to a stint in federal prison. It was while he was in prison paying for his crimes that he turned around, not while he was out on bond, you notice. There have to be consequences associated with actions, otherwise the actions will continue unabated. That's basic life. That's basic humanity. But the same thing applies to, well, if you get unconditional EBT forever and suddenly it goes away for whatever reason, oh my goodness, well, everybody freaks out because it's been allowed to continue unabated forever. It's a free check for your entire life. Yeah. Some people need that, yes. Everybody? I'm not so sure. I'm not so convinced. Bill and Shirley. 10 years, they've had an easy row to hoe, thanks to tax subsidies put into place by the Democrats and all of these other things. And now the free ride is coming to an end and we want to whine. There are cases in all three of those situations where, I'm sorry, compassion is not the word that should enter the conversation unless, as Rhino so adroitly pointed out, it's engraved on the side of the sword. Because sometimes that's what things come down to. That's humanity in a nutshell. And the more we try to dumb it down and put baby bumpers on the sharp edges of life, well, the worse it goes, it seems. At this point, I'm going to give Rhino a chance to weigh in if he would like on some part of this so that he can also get some of the hate mail.
Oh, I would just add the point that I forget who said it. Was it Adam Smith that said it? Where compassion for the wicked is cruelty to the innocent?
Yep.
Like if your brain is just wired to where you can't turn off compassion, then at least understand the logic of showing compassion for the wicked is being cruel to the innocent.
Yes, it's 100% correct. It's a highly accurate statement that we seem to have forgotten. Well, one half of America has definitely forgotten or never knew that. And more so, don't care. Because for them, compassion is a tool. Compassion is a weapon. It's not a feeling. It's not doing the right thing. They use compassion as the cudgel to bludgeon you into going along with them so they can do things the way they want to do them to get what they want out of it. That's not actual compassion. That's weaponized emotion. And the more you give into that, again, the worse things get. We're currently in a rare period in my lifetime, where that has lost some of its power. If you start thinking about everything that we have talked about and everything we have joked about from the liberal side of politics for the last decade, it all kind of fits under that same umbrella. Well, you can't use the wrong words. You're going to hurt their feelings. You got to make sure you use the proper pronouns. Well, you have to, it's all about misplaced, misdirected, weaponized compassion. Occasionally, you got to be a jerk if you want to get anything done. You know, I woke up this morning, said I was going to manage my blood pressure better. That's going great. We will continue on this Wednesday morning on Middays in the Element Wealth Studios here on SuperTalk Mississippi right after this. Keep it here.
So you gotta let me know. Should I stay or should I go?
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You
Welcome back. Do have a correction. We want to make sure that we're factual. Do have a correction on what almost caused me to stroke out in the last couple of segments about the couple who took early retirement, and want to make sure that we're completely factually correct. There was one mistake that I made in there. It's Bill and Shelley, not Bill and Shirley. Her name is Shelley. Everything else was accurate, though. Just wanted to make sure there are no chinks in the armor. Amazon has announced that they're hiring 600,000 robots to replace human beings in their business, but good news, by 2027, that will knock about 30 cents off of the price of any item you buy on Amazon, so it's well worth it. Anybody else see a problem here? Who's going to be buying the stuff? That's the problem that has to be solved with all of this continuous discussion about AI and robots and everything else. And don't get me wrong, my science fiction nerd heart absolutely loves that we're having these conversations. The problem is, if you go back and you read classic science fiction from the 40s and 50s, this was talked about in great length. It's just everybody picked up on the cool robot part and didn't pick up on the socioeconomic impact part of it. There are a lot of things that have to be worked out before this is a viable path. Not that we care, because corporate profits. Did I miss any points there, Rhino?
No, I just think the major nuance that nobody wants to talk about, seemingly, but is in my opinion, the main driving factor of half of the problems. You have a notion as a society that, well, if we could just bring back this type of job, like manufacturing jobs or physical labor jobs or this or that, there are certain job sectors that are filled with workers, and the jobs do not require higher order thinking skills, higher education, much schooling at all in some cases. And it seems like we either as a society refuse to fill those jobs out of some misplaced sense of pride, or we ignore the need for those jobs and they no longer are easily fillable, no schooling required jobs. They become specialties where there's only a handful of people left that get paid through the nose to do it. And both of those are factors in where we go in the future. Like this whole AI and robotics and stuff like that, like we've already seen one wave of, well, where do we put the people with the room temperature IQs? Where did they get a job? And I'm not trying to denigrate physical labor. I'm not trying to denigrate trades. I'm just pointing out, when we were a manufacturing country, we had places to put people that could stand on an assembly line and do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. In a customer service, forward-facing digital world, where do those people work?
Well, exactly. It's I think you put your finger right on it when you said nobody seems to want to have this conversation, because they don't, because it's the hard part. This is going to sound ridiculous. Creating an artificial form of intelligence and letting it power a robot is the easy part. That's the simple part. The bigger effects, the ripple effects from doing that, that's the part nobody wants to discuss. And I'm not really sure we want to particularly finish building that airplane after we take off. We probably need to get that fully constructed before we zoom up into the stratosphere.
Now, if you really want to get to the unpopular part of my opinion, you always hear about population decline and a decline in birth rates. If we're going to be replacing menial tasks and repetitive jobs with robots and AI, wouldn't it make sense that you don't need as many people in your population to keep it at the same level of quality of life?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not trying to be nihilistic and say doom and gloom and we should all go jump off a cliff, but is decrease in population really that worrisome if menial tasks will not require humans?
There was a way of life was talked about back in the 40s and 50s, and it has kind of fallen by the wayside. And we need to get back to a little bit more of this thinking, and it fits into exactly what you're saying. The expression was root hog or die. You either get in there and get busy and get to work and, fend for yourself, or, well, the inevitable happens. We are out of, this is where it gets tricky. Out of misplaced compassion to some people, we make sure everybody can survive to a ripe old age, even if they're not capable of doing it themselves. I'm not sure over the lifespan of the human race that's a good move. What do you think? I just think that we over-provide for people sometimes. Obamacare is a perfect example of it. Don't get me wrong. There are some people that use Obamacare that need Obamacare, that it's important to them. I get that. What were you doing 13 years ago before it kicked in, before it was passed? Plenty of people were surviving. The population was growing. Can we get back to that? Because that's the thing. Now we've built up a system to where so many people are dependent on things like Obamacare that if you just rip that Band-Aid off and completely take it away, well, it's going to have some tragic consequences. And unfortunately, most times it is very hard to fix systemic, destructive problems without having short-term problems be a part of the fix. Am I wrong?
No.
That's just the way of life. If you, let's say, for example, you have a house fire. Your house catches on fire, doesn't burn the thing to the ground, but there's one end of it. You got smoke damage, you got, some structural damage on one part of it. To fix that problem, bare minimum, you're going to have to rip out the parts that were damaged. Just completely do away with them. Throw them away. Get rid of it. And replace it with good stuff. If the fire was bad enough, you have to finish the job of destroying your house in order to wind up with someplace worth living. We have completely lost sight of that concept. And I think it's doing us harm as a society. Now, is this mean? Am I being a jerk? Oh, yeah. Welcome to the show. Glad to meet you. But this is pretty basic. It's pretty simple. Yeah, now I know there's going to be a lot of argument. You can't be that way. You must be compassionate at all times and always in all situations. If somebody comes and rapes and kills your daughter, how much compassion you got? And if you do have some, how misplaced is it? That's an extreme example, yes, but it's all of a piece with everything else we're discussing. And we're seeing that happen over in Europe right now because of this misplaced compassion, this misdirected compassion that's going on over there.
And it's sparking off in Ireland at this point.
Oh, I was just about to bring up that Ireland case. This girl thinks she was 16. She got 10. Grabbed. 10. Got grabbed and raped, and the guy was let off with no charges and no jail time because the rape didn't last long enough. We must be compassionate. No, we must quit being stupid about it. Compassion is good. Unbridled, misdirected, misguided compassion for the wrong people is not. And we got to get back to realizing that and acting that way. Somebody having true struggles, needs help, all for it. Help them to the fullest extent that you can. Just because they're there? No. Sorry. My answer is no on that. And it will continue to be no. We continue on this Wednesday morning on Middays in the Element Wealth Studios next.
Polyupa, Mississippi. Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I'm sorry, the headlines get me sometimes. Headline I just read, New Zealand parrots are fighting crusty bum disease. I know a few people in my daily life that I suspect suffer from that as well. I don't know what it is, but just from the name of it, yeah, I think it's fairly prevalent. Especially depending on where you shop. You see a lot of people, it's quite obvious for you to suspect they have crusty bum disease. It's apparently some sort of infection of the cloaca, which makes it even better, actually, when you read into it. But we're not going to go there any more than we already have and probably shouldn't have gone. Have you seen the headlines, Rhino, that we now have 2 moons?
Yeah, and I'm still not sure I get it.
Well, here's the part that amuses me about this. And this is how the mainstream media leads you, because I've seen the articles all over the place, Rhino has too, that we now have a second moon and it's going to be with us until 2087. Okay, couple of things. A moon is something that orbits another planetary body. Our moon orbits the Earth. Right? It's fairly simple. This is not orbiting the Earth. It is basically tailgating us in our same orbit. We're going to put the matter of the size of this thing over to the side. It's like 40 feet across, something like that. It's not big. Number 2, and here's where they really get you, because we got to have sensational headlines. We got to have something with a little pizzazz, something with a little zing to it to make people click, so that we can get those precious, precious ad dollars. This thing was discovered 60 years ago. It's been there, same spot, for 60 years. Now, all of a sudden, this week though, it's breaking news that we have a second moon. No, we don't. And it's not even new, the thing that we do have. It's been there longer than I have been alive. Why is this suddenly a big deal? My theory? Again, you go back to the most obvious, most often implemented reason for doing things in today's society: money, attention. But also, I think a little bit of it is due to stupidity. And I'm sorry, people are getting noticeably dumber in general. And I'll give you a couple of examples, and the media is leading them into that, and the media is preying on that. I have seen articles the last 3 weeks with the headline, "Is this the week we fall back? What to know about the time change?" It has been the first Sunday in November ever since it was put into place. Well, actually, I think it used to be end of October, but I started seeing these in the first part of October when it was never the case. And now I'm seeing articles about, I saw one a day or two ago about how to prepare your children for the time change. You got to look after the kids, because this might confuse and frighten them that the time on the clock changes. This is a big part of our problem. We have so coddled an entire generation plus of human beings in this country to the point to where we need to make special preparations and work in advance to make sure that the time change doesn't affect them adversely. I'm sorry, that's insane talk to me to begin with, but no, they're putting that out. That's articles. That's a conversation that's being had by the media that you got to make sure you look after your precious snowflake because it's going to get dark an hour earlier. You know, oh my goodness, they're not going to know what to do. They don't care. They're watching Bluey. They don't care.
It's not even the annoying time change.
Right.
We get an extra hour.
Come this spring, you wake them up an hour early, yeah.
That gets annoying.
But again, for a little kid, they don't know what time they wake up.
No.
They have no idea. You wake them up. That is part of the overall conversation so far today on the show. I don't know if many people have picked this up. Most of the time, I have a theme on the show that runs throughout the entire show, and everything ties together again. One more time, taking it to that level of protecting the children where we've got to make sure we make adjustments to our life a month ahead of the time change so that they're not adversely affected. It's misplaced, misdirected compassion. We have to protect and look out for the kids. No, sometimes you got to let them bust their behind and skin their knee wide open on their bicycle or they never learn anything and they can't deal with life as it exists. We have taken that ability away from an entire generation, all in the name of compassion. Compassionate is dangerously close to verging over into being a slur instead of a brag at this point. We're going to reel that stuff in just a little bit. We've got news from Fox, SuperTalk Mississippi News, and then Sandy Middleton joins us talking about something that deserves.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back. Hour number 3 of Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Dave Hughes here. And joining us now in the big chair there, the Executive Director for the Center for Violence Protection, Sandy Middleton, joins us. How are you, Sandy? Good to talk to you again.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me. I'm enjoying the big chair.
Yeah, it's comfortable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice.
I mean, you got 17 screens in front of you,
right.
but you get to ignore them, so it's okay.
That's right.
It's no big deal. October is a big month for a subject that you, I think, very rightly care quite a bit about, and so do I, and that's everything from domestic violence, but more importantly, all the way up to human trafficking, which is still a problem in Mississippi, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. On both topics.
I've asked you this before. I'm going to ask you again in the desperate hope that we have some kind of answer now. What can we do to stop this?
Well, we always say we'd like to work ourselves out of a job, but I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. So this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we do spend a lot of time just talking about providing victims with services and making sure that our courts are taking this issue seriously. We had the domestic violence homicide just 2 days ago in the metro area, and he had been an offender before. And so, without getting into the details of the case, we see this happen with these domestic violence homicides, and it's just such a tragedy when women are killed in their own homes by, a man who supposedly loves them. And it's heartbreaking and it's impactful to, the immediate family and the community and everybody involved. So we're just working real hard to implement some things to, help the victim and again, to encourage our courts to use some new tools to recognize these high risk offenders.
Well, and this speaks, we've been talking about this kind of thing for the whole show just about, but back in the first hour, Natchez Mayor Dan Gibson was talking about how many violent crimes are caused by repeat offenders who kind of build up to it. And we kind of see something very similar in domestic violence. The first time there's domestic violence, they're not trying to kill them.
Right. We know that domestic violence usually escalates without some kind of appropriate intervention. But what we typically see in our justice courts and our municipal courtrooms is, we'll see an offender walk out of the courtroom 2 and 3 and 4 times before, they receive any kind of punishment for what they've done. And so when you embrace the fact that domestic violence is about power and control, every time they get by with it, then they become more powerful. And so it really, you've heard the old saying, we're creating a monster, and that's what we're doing by not holding this offender accountable initially for what he's done, or she. I mean, offenders can also be women. So it's important to do that, and we're working real hard to implement this lethality assessment protocol, which it empowers law enforcement when they come to a domestic violence incident. That I have it here with me. There are 11 questions that an officer can ask the victim in this particular situation. And if the victim screens in, then, there are some other things that we can do to make sure that she and many times her children are safe. So, and it's like, has he ever used a weapon against you or threatened you with a weapon? Has he threatened to kill you or your children? Do you think he might try to kill you? So there's just a litany of questions, and this is a nationally accepted instrument that's being used. And so it helps law enforcement and the court system identify the most likely offenders that will be lethal. And so, like I said, it's a wonderful tool, and we're working real hard in the metro area to help along.
The one thing, and it's almost impossible to solve as a problem, but the one thing is, and if you know any law enforcement and talk to them, know them really well and get them talking about without getting specific details on specific cases, scared victims lie.
Yes.
When police get there, oh no, it's almost a cliche at this point. No, I fell down or I ran into the door, and no, he punched you in the face. Yeah. Is what happened. She hit you with a frying pan. We know what happened. We just have to have you to admit it. And I think some of that ties back to what you were just talking about, because in a very real way, I think a lot of times victims have the fear that if they say something, if they tell the truth about what has been happening to them in their daily life, well, the person that's been doing it to them gets arrested, and 2 days later they're back out on the street and headed back to the house.
That's right, and they're not going to be happy.
Yeah, and then it's definitely going to be a worse situation for them. So they, in self-preservation, say, well, no, it's fine. It'll be okay, when it's not, and it won't be.
Right.
Until it's almost too late. So it does come back to the court system in a lot of ways, because it's become well known that, you get arrested, you're going to be right back out.
Yeah, and I think what we did several years ago is, we made it to where law enforcement could press the charges against a domestic violence offender. Now, there are certain things that they need in order to be able to do that, but we've really had a pushback in our court systems that, they won't proceed with the case without the victim. And it's like, well, what do you do in a murder case? I mean, you don't have a victim, and also if the law enforcement officer pressed the charges, that means that they saw enough to be the witness in the case. So that a lot of times part of what we do at the center is we provide pictures. I mean, we'll take pictures of bruising, and we even have a nurse practitioner that can document injuries and everything for court. So there's a lot of different ways that that the courts can can see and know that it was a domestic violence incident without having to force the victim to, to testify, knowing that the worst thing that's going to happen is they may get 6 months in jail. So, it's very difficult for victims of domestic violence because many times they're the breadwinner, they're the father of the children. And, again, in chancery court, when they go for a divorce, they're going to see a judge, and the judge is going to say, well, the daddy has the right to see the kids. And then that's not ever amicable because many times the offender uses the kids to continue to manipulate and demonstrate power and control. And so it's really, really a difficult issue, and we really appreciate everything we see law enforcement doing to come alongside these victims. And so, at this point, we just really kind of need the courts to catch up.
Well, exactly. And it goes back to the theme today, which is misdirected compassion. The compassion for the person that is beating up their spouse or their life partner or co-parent or whatever the situation is. The compassion for them should not outweigh the compassion for the victim. And we've kind of reached that point in a lot of areas of life, and we need to do away with that. We need to get a little tougher again, because we are putting soft, caring feelings in the wrong direction sometimes.
You certainly get an amen from the world of advocates on that. And they really, it's because it is such a difficult situation. It does deserve a lot of attention. And, in our last legislative session, they decided to decrease some of the fines and fees that were being assigned to domestic violence offenders. And, you're like, why? I mean, why do we spend so much time thinking about the offender and what works for the offender? I mean, 9 times out of 10, when there is a domestic violence incident, the victim has to leave the home, usually take the children, find a place to live. Many times they don't have transportation. So the victim has all these issues to work with, and yet we go to court and, the mentality is, well, he just messed up, or that's just their business, or, and so it's really difficult.
If the judicial opinion is we can't trust anybody, we can't trust the victim when they say what was done, we can't trust the advocates who had these pictures of the damage done by this violence, we can't trust the police officer when they file these charges for them without the victim coming forward. If we can't trust anyone, my question to those judges would be, why should we trust you?
Oh, that's powerful right there. I like that.
I woke up in a mood again this morning, Sandy. I'm sorry you're stuck with it. Can you hang around through the break?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. We'll continue discussing this with Sandy Middleton when we come back here on Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Keep it here.
To the place I belong, West Virginia.
So awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
This is a story about Billy Joe and Bobby Sue. 2 young lovers with nothing better to do. Sit around the house, get high and watch a tube. And here's what happened when they decided to cut loose.
Sandy, you see what I put up with? Do you hear this bumper music Rhino picked to come back after that first segment?
I like it.
It's perfect.
I like it.
Absolutely perfect. Welcome
stuff.
back. Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Dave Hughes, Sandy Middleton with us in the studio, and I'm going to blindside you with a question you may not have the answer to in front of you, and that's fine. I'm prefacing it this way to get you off the hook if you don't. Do we have any idea about the numbers when it comes to domestic violence in the state of Mississippi?
You know, you're asking me as I've got my annual report right here in front of me, so I was ready for you today. Now,
I love it.
Yeah, there as far as we generally compile the court cases from across the state, and it varies between 5,000 and 6,000 misdemeanor domestic violence cases that are seen in court. So that comes directly from the courts.
So 5,000 to 6,000.
Yes.
That's over a year.
Yes.
And that's about 5,000 or 6,000 too many, if you ask me. But I don't think we'll ever completely eradicate this. It goes back to what you said at the beginning. You'd love to get yourself out of a job. I'm not sure you're ever going to be able to do that because human beings, some of them, they stink.
Well, and of course, you know, what we also know about domestic violence victims, and it goes along with what you're talking about, is the majority of them don't report ever. And many report one time, and then, you know, when things go just like you described in the previous segment, they're never going to report again. And you know, so that number is certainly not representative of the victims across the state.
Now, of course, part of the problem is sentencing guidelines, because those are handed down by the Supreme Court and other people, and they tell the local judges, well, you can do between this and this for a penalty. I just feel like we are trying to standardize something that's an individual situation, case by case, and I don't think from the results that it seems to be working, Sandy.
Well, I would tend to agree with you, but our frustration is that we have a hard time getting to the sentencing phase. I mean, generally, you know, what you're talking about, it takes place on your felony cases and, you know, in the big courts. And, you know, the majority of domestic violence cases are seen as misdemeanors in either municipal or justice courts. And, you know, everybody needs to go sit in on their local municipal or justice court session, because it's an amazing thing to watch. I mean, you've literally got sometimes, you know, 50, 60, 70, 100 people standing around with traffic tickets to domestic violence to theft, and you know, your prosecutor generally comes in, and generally the prosecutor has his or her own law practice, but they come into court and there's a stack of files, you know, and they start to kind of work through them, and you know, it's just a real sloppy way to pass out justice, you know, because I mean, literally, if there are, let's say, 15 domestic violence cases on the docket, literally some of them will just get tossed aside and remanded, and you know, and that seems really simple in the moment for the court, but when you have a victim who is displaced and who is in danger, and the court case, the court puts it off or resets it for, and usually it's not the next month. Usually it's, you know, 60 days or 90 days. So they kick the can down the road. They reset the case. And then in reality, what happens is you may have a victim that takes off from work or gets a babysitter or both and comes and sits in court for hours waiting on their case to be called. And this happens to them 4 and 5 times, and it continues to get, you know, pushed back. And finally, they just quit coming. And so then that time that they don't come, the prosecutor says, well, the victim's not here. Remand it to the file. And that's how it goes.
In between those 2, 3, 4 times, it gets a little worse for them in their day-to-day life every time. So all of the evidence, all of the results from trying to get some help with their situation teach them, well, this isn't the way to get any help because I'm getting no help. It's just making things worse. So they stop. Exactly. That's the unintended second-order effect of just remanding cases or putting them to the side or letting them out with no bond and saying, well, now don't do it again. That's not what you do to be effective in this kind of situation.
No, and we have a domestic abuse intervention program that's based on the Duluth model. It's an evidence-based model where it's a behavioral modification program, and offenders are paid. They're required to pay for their attendance at the program, and that pays our facilitators and our security. And they can come for 6 months and attend these classes and hopefully learn to stop being an offender. But what happens even with that is if a prosecutor recommends this and a judge says, okay, you've been charged with misdemeanor or simple domestic violence, and we're going to remand your sentence until you complete the Batters Intervention Program. And if the way it's supposed to work, if there's a guilty plea and then they go through the class, if they complete the class and everything goes well, then at the end of that, they're able to remand it and it just stays in the file, so to speak. But a lot of times what happens is judges will just say, well, you go to that program, but there's no teeth in it to where, if the offender just doesn't want to come or, refuses to, is there half the time and doesn't finish the class, a lot of times the judge will just say, well, let's give him another chance. And you're like, well, you just gave him a chance and he showed you what he thought about the option that you gave him, but he didn't come. So, there's just a lot of problems that we need to get our hands around.
Well, we need to look at this from the perspective of drug courts because those have been very successful.
That's right.
But it's exactly what you're talking about. You're in trouble. You're going to jail. But if you do this and finish it, we'll ease up on you.
That's
if
right.
you don't, well, this is what you're getting and that's it. It has to be an either or. It can't be maybe. Drug court doesn't work that way. I don't think this should work that way either.
No, agreed. And again, just to repeat what you've been talking about, you've been on your soapbox about this morning. And, it's all about accountability. When we raise our children, the military, in so many aspects of our lives, like I'd like to get back to my office in about 5 minutes, but I bet if I go 105, I'm not going to go far around the interstate before I find some accountability. And so, it's very frustrating that, it just seems like the justice process, it doesn't even out for victims and it's just not right, as you said.
Well, and it's a problem that has to be dealt with because I'm sorry, with all of the hue and cry over taking care of people and making sure that everyone's needs are met, well, how about the need to not have you and your kids beaten up on a daily basis because somebody else had a SAD that day? That's the reality for thousands of people in the state of Mississippi every day. All things being equal, that one's not. It's, to me, a higher order problem than some of the other ones that we seem to want to focus on, but we have a tendency to want to deal with the easy problems to get an easy win and move forward instead of dealing with the things that actually have an impact on people's lives. And yes, I am on one today.
I'm glad you are. I'm loving it.
Just very rightly pointed out. I'm on one full gallop today. Is there anything anyone can do to help this process along and help make this better?
Well, I've been meeting with some legislators recently and just trying to remind them that the people of Mississippi care about justice. We care about justice. We want to see people who are offenders get some punishment. And I just think that, like you said earlier, we get tangled up in stuff that is really irrelevant to the average citizen. And we don't think about protecting people and keeping people safe. And, that's without even going into the trauma and the issues that it causes our children when they're in domestic violence homes. They have PTSD. They grow up and many times, have a lot of psychological problems. And, so it's not only impactful for the victim, it's impactful for the children. And also, not to mention our police officers, it's the most dangerous call that they go to.
And it's their least favorite. Ask any of them. They will be glad to tell you that. Sandy Middleton, I'm very proud we have verified that you will not drive faster than 104 going back to the office.
I promise.
Because 105 is a problem. 104, yeah, it'll be okay.
That's right. I'll get by with that.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. Sandy, always enjoyed talking to you. Keep up the good work and keep us up to date on this problem. Hopefully we can get you in here one day and we can discuss how much the numbers have dropped and things have improved. That's the goal.
I like it. Thank you, Dave.
We continue on this Wednesday morning on Middays in the Element Wealth Studios right after this. Keep it here.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to you. SuperTalk, Mississippi, Middays. Gerard on the road tomorrow at the Golden Nugget in Biloxi for the annual Mississippi Aerospace and Defense Symposium presented by Aerospace and Defense Alliance of Mississippi and Mississippi Enterprise for Technology, showcasing our state's capabilities, bringing in new partners and investment into our state. To learn more, go to msaerodefense.org. It's AERO as in aerospace, msaerodefense.org to find out more. Boy, I am discarding so many comments in my head as I go through the day. No, what you're hearing is what makes it past the filter. Just picture that. We were talking earlier, Rhino, about the people that are freaking out that EBT and SNAP may be ended or paused come the first of the month if the government shutdown isn't resolved. There's a different class of people. And some of the people on EBT and SNAP, as I said, need it. They should have it. There's a whole bunch of people that game that system like nobody's business, and here is one. I don't even know where he is. We can't play the audio because FCC. But this guy let out a video just going insane. They cut off his food stamps because he was supposed to work 15 hours a week. He said, and I quote, this is a direct word-for-word quote of part of the video, "I'm not working for nobody. The taxpayers work for me. They need to feed my kids. I'm the boss." There is, fitting with our theme, there's a segment of the population that believes, well, we do need to take care of him. We need to be compassionate. We can't let him and his kids starve. No, he can't let his kids starve. We need to quit taking responsibility for everyone else's stupid decisions. How bold are you that you record a video and release it to the world with that attitude, Rhino? How far gone are you at that point?
Well, obviously he's got a relatively new smartphone with a nice camera on it.
Yes.
So he's not hurting in that department.
Oh, no, he's doing fine. He's doing fine. And it's amazing when you start looking at people, a lot of the people complaining about EBT and SNAP benefits are doing so using their fancy cell phone. And I don't care if it's a few years old. It's a matter of very visible priorities. Your priority was you got to have that phone. Not, I got to feed my kids. I got to go, I don't know, take a class at a workforce center to better myself and make it so I can have all the nice things by earning them instead of getting upset and pitching a hissy fit because no one hands them to me. It's very clearly misplaced priorities. And the misdirected compassion strikes again. Oh, well, he's having a rough time. No, he is a rough time. That particular individual made it perfectly clear he's the problem. And we got to start dealing with that. Now, some things are being dealt with. President Trump put the thing into place where we have a high fee for H-1B visas. Because the entire purpose of the H-1B visa program was to allow companies to bring in employees to fill roles that they couldn't find anybody qualified to do it. Well, it got perverted, as everything always does, and it's been used to hire basically, everyday, no special skills required workers and pay them less than, they would have to pay an American who's looking for a job that is perfectly capable of doing it. So the fee made it so that, that no longer made financial sense. Walmart has announced, they announced this yesterday afternoon, the CEO of Walmart was in the Oval Office. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was talking about the $100,000 fees. Walmart has paused all of their job offers to H-1B visa potential recipients. They paused it. And number one, let's follow this out here. Number one, why does Walmart need foreigners to come in to do jobs on an H-1B visa? Why? The answer to that is buried in the reason why they have paused these, because the $100,000 visa fee per employee made it no longer financially advantageous to the company to bring those people in instead of hiring Americans. So now they're better off hiring Americans and paying them a better wage than they would have paid the visa recipient to do the same job. Everybody howled when President Trump announced this. There have been so many arguments and so many discussions about these are highly qualified people. You called customer service for anything lately? Could you understand what they're saying? And I'm sorry, sir, I will never in a million years believe your name is Bob. Not buying it. This was a practical solution to an existing problem that President Trump put into place. But the problem is you had to be able to understand what the problem was, what was causing the problem to be a problem, because if this $100,000 fee had always been in place on H-1B visas, we wouldn't be discussing this. This never would have become a problem. This never would have affected the workforce of America. This never would have impacted the economy of America as these people make money and then send it back home. President Trump came in, identified the root of the problem, and put a fix in place. All of the people who didn't understand what was actually causing the problem, what was actually creating the difficulties in this situation, thought it was a horrible, stupid, ridiculous move. Why would you do that? It turns out he was right. Again, still, whichever word you care to use. We have to do more of this. This goes back to what we were just talking about with Sandy. Domestic violence increases. Repeat offenders are a problem. And they escalate. Why do they escalate? You got to dig down a level or two and you figure out, once the offender and the victim both realize that nothing is ultimately going to happen short term, even after multiple legal problems, multiple law enforcement involvements in a domestic violence situation, they become emboldened. They don't care. There is no incentive to change the behavior. The $100,000, an incentive for companies to change the behavior, or more to the point in this case, removing the financial incentive to not change the behavior. This doesn't, to me, even count as looking at a problem creatively. This doesn't fit the definition of innovation. This is just cold, hard, logical sense. If the water pipe in your house starts leaking in the yard. You got a sinkhole for me. It's a bad deal. The plumber comes out and says, found your problem. Gopher's been eating a hole in it. Yeah, you have to fix the pipe, but you better figure out how to get rid of the gopher, too, or you're just going to keep having the same problem over and over and over and wasting more and more money fixing the same problem over and over without getting any beneficial results to yourself. President Trump is an excellent gopher hunter in that analogy. We need to all take a page from that book and become better gopher hunters. Is gopher hunting even a thing? I know.
I'm fairly certain that was the entire character arc of Bill Murray's character in Caddyshack.
I think he was more of a gopher hater, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he expressed it quite violently with every single trick that Wile E. Coyote ever used against the Roadrunner. But I'm not sure he would qualify as a hunter. Can you get a gopher hunting license?
Well, according to this analogy, I think Gavin Newsom would qualify as a gopher farmer.
Gopher rancher. I like it. It's also accurate, by the way. Well done. So, yeah, we have to start drilling down. We have to start figuring out where the problem is coming from and judging it with cold logic instead of misdirected bleeding heart compassion for every living creature on planet Earth. Ma'am, there's a Wolverine gnawing your child's face off. Maybe we don't worry about the Wolverine's feelings right now. Just a thought. We got one segment, and then we're out for this Wednesday. We'll take care of that when we come back in the Element Wealth Studios on Middays. Keep it here.
I've been for real, babe, with the trouble man. Moving, going tight. I come hard, I come up getting down. There's only three things for sure: taxes, death, and trouble. This I know, baby.
Hello. Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines. Breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Rhino, we never went back and touched on the fact that it has come out that Luigi Mangione, the guy who shot and killed Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO in New York City, sometime before that, was apparently in Thailand and got attacked and clawed by a pack of 7 Thai ladyboys. What are you doing when you wind up in that situation?
I'm fairly certain that would mean that was the reason he went to Thailand.
That would be a logical guess, I think. When you hear that, if you start connecting those dots and you're one of these girls that are sending him money, he's getting all sorts of money and marriage proposals and everything else in prison. You start processing that, do you start to feel maybe a little dumb? I would think.
Nah.
Now that I think about it. Now that I say it out loud, no.
I mean, you still got people that go goo-goo-eyed when the name Charles Manson gets mentioned.
Yes.
Most of those people were at the No Kings protest, but yeah.
Yeah, well, the mail only runs once a day. Once it's come and you haven't gotten a response, you move on. Whether it's him or Luigi or, back when Ted Kaczynski. I didn't hear the same kind of thing about Ted Kaczynski, though. The Unabomber. But he was...
It's because all the pictures of him after his capture were him being very disheveled and looking like somebody that lived by themselves in a shack in the wilderness.
He looked homeless in just about everything you saw. and he had zero charisma. For better or worse, Manson had charisma. It was a deranged, insane charisma, but it was still there. Mangione has charisma. And I think we underestimate how powerful charisma is in day-to-day life sometimes. It applies to everything, basically. Which is why President Trump is being so successful and is driving the people with no charisma absolutely insane because they don't understand it. It's like winning an argument in Chinese when the other person only speaks English. You don't understand what's happening or why this is working. What's going on? Oh, my goodness. And they feel threatened. Well, that and some of them are just not good people.
Most of them aren't very bright. I mean, just look at the number of people that are losing their minds over the construction taking place at the White House.
In 1902, Teddy Roosevelt built the West Wing. In 1909, President Taft added the Oval Office. It's just over 100 years old, the Oval Office. In the 30s, 33 and 34, FDR expanded the White House, moved the Oval Office to a different place less than 100 years ago and added a pool to the White House. In 48, Truman rebuilt the entire interior, completely remodeled the White House, the whole thing. He did it. Nixon in the 70s built on the press room and the bowling alley. In 2009, President Obama turned the tennis court into a basketball court, if you remember.
I'm fairly certain there was a remodel in there from Jackie Kennedy because she did a whole TV special on it that I saw clips from last night.
Very true. Was she the one that, or was that Eleanor Roosevelt that put in the Rose Garden?
I want to say that was Eleanor Roosevelt.
I think it may have been. I can't remember for sure, and I'm too lazy to look it up at this point. It's been a long day already. But within the last 100 to 150 years of a 250-year-old country, all of that has happened. None of that was a problem. But now President Trump is destroying your house.
And the editor from the Babylon Bee has probably the funniest take on it of all. Quote, Trump is demolishing the White House, which has remained untouched and preserved in its original state since it was hand-built by God in 4000 BC.
If you've never been there, by the way, I highly recommend going to check out the Babylon Bee. You have not cackled like that in quite a while until you have visited the Babylon Bee. Like most satire sites, it can sometimes be hit or miss, but to me, they have more hits than they do misses, especially here lately. They do good stuff because, once again, humor is highly effective in making points, in getting things across. And I think it gets a bad name for nonsensical reasons sometimes. If you're serious 24/7, 365, well, it's harder to get people to take you seriously. It's the way it works. Humans are weird creatures. Rhino, I'd love to stay around and talk more, but I have been told by several very, very well-placed authorities that President Trump is at my house destroying it. I got to go home and see what it's doing and see what needs to be done about this because, you know, I like my house. Have a wonderful day, buddy.
You too, dude.
And enjoyed it as always. We will do this again soon, whenever that might be. I will see you then, my friend.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.